Computer. Okay, recording. I see the little red button. Does everybody else see the little red button?
You see the red button.
All right, at least we're recording it and we'll post it both to YouTube and maybe Facebook. So for those of you just joining us, I am Paul Colpadilla. I am your humble host here of these Friday night forums with technical assistance by Dennis Resendez, and tonight with Dwight Young pitching in as well. I'm an elected member of LACDP from Assembly District 49. I was an associate member for the Field Burn Democratic Club of LA County starting in the summer of 2019 until this past spring. So I have about a year under my belt as an associate and now as an elected. So I'm relatively new, but not completely new. And anyway, welcome to you all. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for being ready, willing, and able to discuss the issues of the day. As they say, that's what these forums are for, related to LACDP, and to promote openness and transparency and accountability, right, within LACDP and the larger Democratic Party. I happen to believe that the Democratic Party should be small d Democratic, not just capital D Democratic. And I hope that all of you agree and that that's why you're here. So yeah, we'll be getting into a bunch of topics tonight. We have a lot to get to. A lot happened at the marathon meeting that went until 3:23 in the morning. As we were saying in the chat, we should get a t-shirt that says I survived the marathon meeting until 3:23 on September 8th through September 9th. So there's a lot to get to with that and other things too. And then we got this special meeting coming up on September 22nd to continue the rest of the agenda that we didn't get to on September 8th/9th. So a lot to talk about and a lot to get to. So let's dig right in. The first thing that I had listed on the plan topics was, I hope you all got, if you especially opted in, the LACDP member contact list. I don't know if you did. I finally got it today from my AD 49 vice chair. Other people had gotten it yesterday or the day before, I believe. I had emailed Drexel a week ago and never heard back as to when we were going to get it, because it had been, a couple of weeks, a few weeks since we had submitted all that. I didn't hear anything about it anymore, and nothing was coming out. So I was wondering, how that's one of the difficult things, right? Is that because we can't meet in person, we're limited to these Zoom meetings to try to be a very imperfect facsimile, and so we can't get to know each other in person. And quite frankly, talking to other Democrats from around the country, this is a problem, right, in other county parties where the members cannot talk to each other, and certain powers that be really don't want members to be able to talk to each other and organize because, quite frankly, they see it as a threat to their power. And so, I fear that was part of the reason we did not get the member contact list. And had to file a special motion at the organizational meeting to finally pry it loose and stop the executive director from forcing people to pay large sums of money to be able to get the list and contact each other. Of course, at that meeting with that motion, we got it for candidates immediately. Because up until that point, right, candidates did not have access. They could not effectively campaign unless they forked over a ton of money. And so, we got it for candidates, but then we got the opt-in for the internal member directory list for us to be able to communicate with each other if, a given member opted in and to be put on the list. Now, the other part of this, right, that I had thought was included in the motion, I certainly had mentioned it to be included in the motion during our discussion, was that there's two sets of lists. That's why I put on the agenda lists, plural, with the parentheses. There's the list, right, that is being bought and sold on the open market to anybody that pays money to LACDP. And that, after the meeting, when I asked Drexel about that, because we started getting communications from candidates as per usual, right, who apparently bought the list, he said, no, that was not part of the motion. Check the minutes. You're wrong. Okay. I had thought, though, that there would be two sets of opt-ins, right? The opt-in for the free internal member directory for us to be able to communicate with each other, and then the bought and paid for list that is sold to third parties. I thought, of course, that we should have a right to opt in to that, or opt out, as it were. And Drexel said, you said you have the right to opt out if you wish, but no, that wasn't the part of the motion. And so folks can't opt in or opt out, via that motion or automatically. You have to make a special request to him to opt out. I chose not to, because I find it interesting to see what candidates are putting out there. However, of course, we still don't know how certain candidates, both within LACDP and outside LACDP, obtained the list. And for those of you who didn't follow the election challenge, that whole controversy, right? And at the organizational meeting, you may or may not have noticed that Angelica Dueñas asked Mark Gonzalez how he obtained her private phone number. Early in the meeting, he said that anybody could go down to the county registrar's office and get the public data on folks free of charge. But then later in the meeting, she said, but you called me on a number I didn't give the registrar. And then he admitted, well, I bought the list, he claimed. She has since then been asking him for receipts, which he has not provided. Cal Access shows that Mark Gonzalez and his personal political action committee last donated any amount of money over $100 to LACDP in 2017. So we do not know if, quite frankly, or when Mark Gonzalez paid for the new member roster to be able to conduct his campaign.
Phone.
And if you could mute yourselves if you're not talking right now. And so the other issue, we brought this up at the last Friday Night Forum, Nichelle Henderson, I believe, was first out of the gate among the candidates for public office to start emailing us. And so I replied to her and I asked her, how did you get, my contact info? She had an email address that was private for me, the one that I'm emailing you all on, actually. So I don't know if she got it that way. But anyway, she got it somehow, and she didn't respond as to how she got it. I was asking her if she bought the list, and if so, if she, unlike Mark Gonzalez, could provide proof of purchase. And I sent 2 emails to her, and she didn't get back to me. And then, of course, we started seeing more candidates get the list. And what's interesting is that that some candidates apparently did not buy the list. One candidate, Mr. Erickson, John Erickson from West Hollywood City Council, told one of our fellow LACDP members that he had been given this member's contact info by Drexel Hurd. And that Drexel Hurd, again, the executive director of LACDP, had said that it would be a good idea for him in his campaign to contact this member for her vote. Again, this goes back to the conflict of interest questions with our executive director. It turns out that he is, I believe, an ex officio member of LACDP. I don't think he's an alternate. I think he's an ex officio member. And so he wears 2 hats. And it's created some problems because, in my view, and the view of a lot of people, the executive director needs to be neutral and should not be taking sides in internal LACDP elections or elections that are up for endorsement within LACDP for public office candidates, and using his powers or influence or access to the member list to give out to his friends or favored candidates. So that is a little bit of background and commentary. Thank you for indulging me on the member contact list. if any of you have any comments about that or questions, or if you haven't gotten it yet, one of my big questions is, why didn't Drexel Hurd and LACDP, which emails us, on the regular, send this list out from lacdp.org? Why has it been left up to local AD chairs or vice chairs to, when they wish to or get around to it, email it out this week to the local people? It just seems very strange to me. We'll get to another thing that seems very strange to me about standing committees. We're not getting notified about standing committee meetings either. Again, we get emails all the time from Drexel and LACDP. We're not getting emails about standing committees and when they're occurring, nor, as I say, this member list. So 2 big question marks for me. I don't know if they're big question marks for you, but if you do have a question or comment about this before we move on to our next agenda item, feel free to jump in there and raise your hand, or you can also speak in the chat. The best way for me and others to see it is if you raise your hand, but you can also mention something in the chat. You could even unmute yourself. That's another thing I should mention. I do not force mute people, unlike our chair, Mark Gonzalez, or our executive director, Drexel Hurd. I believe that people should have the right to unmute themselves per Robert's Rules of Order and just common decency. Robert's Rules says simultaneous oral communication must be allowed. And so you have the power to unmute yourselves. I will or may sometimes mute you if I'm hearing background noise or otherwise. I would ask that if you're not speaking, that you do mute. I'm gonna mute a few of you right now, but this is not a force mute, right? You have the power to unmute yourself because you're adults. I don't call you children, as the chair was doing at our last LACDP meeting. We are all adults, and so I trust that you will act like adults. Anyway, okay. So if you have any comments or questions about this topic of the LACDP member contact list, I gave quite a bit of background and commentary there. But if you have anything else that you'd like to add, feel free to raise your hand or speak out. I see Richard Vaughn, hand up. Richard, take it away.
Well, what I would do is, as a group, I would ask Drexel to give what the rules are regarding who gets them, how they get them, and including the rules for chairs. If the chairs are supposed to get this out, what specifically are the rules regarding it? Once you get the rules, then you're not fishing around saying, well, this seems wrong and that seems wrong. Why don't we find out, have them put it in writing what the rules are, and say, give us what the complete set of rules are. And that way, if somebody is not living up to them, be they my chair or whoever's supposed to be getting this, whether it's Drexel or whoever, and who do I go ahead, if a rule's being broken, who do I report this broken rule to? So that way, it seems like you've got the whole book in front of you, including what the rules are, and you won't be saying, this seems strange and that seems strange. You'll have the whole, and make them basically come out of the closet. We have the rules, you don't, and you don't get to know until you ask about it. So I'd ask for the whole set of rules, and that way you have it. Right?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say to that, Richard, is that I do not believe there are any written rules. There was the motion that was filed, against, right, this tradition which had sprung up. I do not know when. Perhaps you or someone else knows when. We had been told by others, including at that organizational meeting, that the list used to be free or low cost. And suddenly, at some point, I don't know if when Drexel was hired earlier this year, he began charging everyone, both members and non-members of LACDP, for list names and contact info, email, phone number, postal address, etc. And so I think it was just a decision that was never written down. I don't know who made it or when, but it was undone, right, at the organizational meeting with this motion that we would make the internal directory free of charge to members as long as, they chose to opt into the list. So yeah, to your point though, I don't think there's any kind of written rule about this. So yeah, you're on mute right now, Richard. You can unmute yourself.
They basically did the same thing to me when I was doing a presentation. They came up with a whole new set of rules, and they all agreed those are the brand new set of rules that we're going to be using in this setup. So what we were starting to do with all of them is we wanted in writing. No, just phone call where you got Drexel on the line and it's all audio. And unless you're recording the meeting, you don't have any paper trail. For everything that you're asking for, that you should say, I want it in writing. Please respond to me regarding my specific request. And that way, when you go to the policy committee or whatever you're talking about and say, here's the paper trail. Here's where I asked on such and such a date. Here's how long it took to get a response. But everything's in writing. And that way, nobody can claim, hey, you know what? You can talk really a good game, but because you only have talk, you've got no proof of what I did or what I didn't do. And when I ask for specific rules on things and you go, well, they don't exist yet and all that, because there are a lot of people at Central Committee who do enjoy the power, and part of it is keeping most of the members of Central Committee in the dark regarding what's being done and how it's being done. So saying, you know what, we want transparency. You know, we didn't have it with Eric, and Mark, you're brand new, and we know you don't want to be that same way because it looks like we gave about a few $1 million out to all the people who are complaining about Eric. And you don't want that to happen to you. So we're asking you, before you have to spend any money, we want to help you out here by saying, you know what, you need to be transparent about what you're doing and why you're doing it. That's my opinion. Thank you.
No, thank you, Richard. Brandy Grace, hand raised. Floor is yours.
So this is largely speculation, but informed speculation. I think the impetus for changing the way the list was handled, in recent years, there was kind of a minor scandal from one of the state conventions. The list of delegates for the state CDP convention got out and got into the hands of a for-profit organization that started texting and emailing all of us with ads. And that created a minor kerfuffle and an uproar of privacy concerns. Mm-hmm. So suddenly there was a big shift party side across the state to ensure that delegates' privacy was respected in terms of that. And so I think there was kind of a quick 180 from a lot of the county committees to try to ensure their own lists had correct privacy and at the same time ensure that people had access for campaigning. And so I'm not surprised, in least, that might have led to some, let's do this. No, wait, let's not do this. Wait, let's do this other thing. No, that doesn't work. I think we're just kind of on the tail end of that nobody knew what to do kind of situation.
Yeah, I guess I'm not as forgiving as you are, Brandy. The reason being is that they continued, right, this policy of selling off our member contact info without asking us for any permission. So if they were concerned about privacy, they would have immediately gone to the best practice policy of opt-in. They would have allowed us to opt in to an internal member directory and to a sale directory to third parties. They didn't do either. They
yeah,
just
I know.
Judging everyone.
You're right. I think part of it is trying to figure out what the best practice is, and part of it is trying to also respect the idea that delegates and alternates and associates are considered public members. So somebody should have the ability to contact us as their representatives for the party, and also campaigns should have the ability to contact us to campaign. So I think that's why. And I think this new list of being able to opt out of an internal directory is the current compromise, but I don't know that it's handled right. I think that's where things are coming from.
Okay. Okay. Maybe. All right. So I don't know if there's any other discussion on this topic. I did want to move on, if there's not, to, I called it a brief review of LACDP endorsement recommendation committee meetings. It may or may not be all that brief. I should have said review of the LACDP endorsement recommendation committee process. I put in brief because I didn't want us to hash over 8 more hours of going through candidates. I just wanted us to go through some of the things that I noticed and that I know noticed because you've told me, and those of you who haven't, what things that happened, problems that cropped up basically that that you think should be corrected. I know I have mine, and I suspect some of you at least have yours. And we can also talk to some voices of experience too. Linda Bassett's been on this committee before. So has Jeff Schwartz, so has Richard Vaughn. I could kick it off if you'd like, or if some of you would like to just jump in there with the problems that you saw in your local endorsement recommendation committee meetings, things that I found were unfair and undemocratic, unfair to both the candidates and to us as LACDP members making important decisions and calls on who to recommend for endorsement and who not to. And so anyway, I could, kick it off, or I'm willing to let any one of you kick it off. But you can raise your hand, you can unmute yourself. Raised hand is a little more polite, I suppose. I'm also trying to check the chat. I have Dwight and Dennis here as my wingmen, as it were. If they can also keep an eye on the chat to make sure that we're not missing anything or anyone. So yeah, welcome to those of you who are just joining us. I do ask though that you just, put yourself on mute if you're not talking, just to eliminate background noise. So seeing no hands, I can kick it off, I suppose. The thing that, a few things bothered me. So one of them is the time, right? In the first of the 3 80 local endorsement recommendation committee meetings I sat, candidates were allotted just 10 minutes. And they were given the 10 minutes on the clock. And when technical difficulties and housekeeping things took up time, for the first couple of candidates in that interview session, couple hours, they only got 2 questions. 2 questions from us members to inquire more about them, to learn more about them, to find out more about them, and whether or not we believe we should recommend them for endorsement. In my view, is pathetic. These 2 candidates got like a minute or 2 each for opening and closing, and 2 questions, and that was it. It allows candidates to filibuster if they so choose. If in some cases there were no time limits put on the candidates. I'm going to be in a makeup session. Now, this is another thing that I don't know how this fell through the cracks, but tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., we're having a joint 8049, 8057 meeting for a candidate running for the South Atlanta City Council who was forgotten about. According to the emails I've received from our AD vice chair, he fell through the cracks, and so he didn't get considered, was not on the consent calendar or anything. He's going to have to wait until October, I guess, because he wasn't in the special meeting, agenda based on the regular meeting agenda of September. And here's the topper, right? And we're only going to get 10 minutes with him. We're going to give him a 1-minute opening, a 1-minute closing, and 8 minutes for questions. We have 2 ADs, 2, so 15, 20 people, right? And we're going to get 8 minutes of questions. I just think that this process has to be improved somehow. I think at the very least, candidates should have 15 total, and members, we should get good questioning going. These are important decisions, and that consent calendar matters, and these endorsements matter. And then the other thing I want to say, the counting of votes. In the first one I went to, we all gave our votes, right? We said who we're voting for, okay. And this person was going to take the numbers, and he said count them later at home, because they had another joint 8048, and I forget who they were joining up with. I don't think it was exclusive 8048 meeting. And he said, I don't have time to do the, and I insisted politely, said, no, we have to make the time to count the votes, to make sure we're all on the same page, and there's no funny business or accusation of funny business with the vote count. And so we did. And I made sure that we were all on the same page with these vote counts. Because for those of you who have had bad experience with ADEMs, you know about this. And the inability of some prominent Democrats to do basic math and basic counting. And it threw out, I believe it was the 8051 election. That was one of the reasons it was thrown out. Counting matters. Votes matter. And it just seemed that some 80 chairs and vice chairs were not taking this seriously enough. Thank goodness in the two other meetings that I had, at least, the vote counting, they were serious about. And then the discussion too. So in the first AD, because they had scheduled these back-to-back AD local endorsement recommendation committee meetings, the AD chair and vice chair kept wanting to cut discussion short because we have another meeting. We have other people waiting for us. Well, discussion matters. We need to be able to discuss amongst ourselves the pros and cons of various candidates and recommending them for endorsement, right? Thankfully, in the two other meetings that I attended, we had ample time for discussion. There was no rushing off, no desire or need, as it were, to cut short discussion. So those are a few of the things that I noticed and had issues with. But I see a hand up from Henry Horton. So let's go to Henry. Henry, are you there?
Yeah, this is my couple of cycles with endorsement meetings, both LACDP and ADEM. I think there's a critical problem with leadership. As you know, AD 57, our chair, has been running these kinds of backdoor deals for endorsements for the last couple of years. It finally caught up with him, but like in our situation, one member of the candidate was a delegate, so and we had these questions set to us, and on the mark on the top was confidential. Do not share this with anyone. Well, he's a candidate, he's a delegate, so he got the answers. He got the questions before the actual meeting, and we raised the issue. Zenaida raised the issue, and she was ignored because he hates her for whatever reason. And he said, well, he ignored her and said that we're going to run this. And then Dexter jumped in, and he was called in and said the chair has the right to run these meetings, and that took us about 40 minutes to resolve that. But it's typical that I think moving forward, we need to pay attention to the chairs and the vice chairs. And if so, we need to hold them accountable and remove them from office or their position, because what is happening a lot in our particular AD 57, we have 3 members of Rio Hondo School Board or trustees, college trustees, that are also 3 delegates that are elected delegates to the Central Committee. So when voting comes up, we had 2 district elections in Rio Hondo. They voted as a block against our preferred choice, and then voted against an incumbent that was our preferred choice. So obviously there's a block going on, and it's just totally unethical. A lot of stuff is going on. So even if you get and the management of the meeting is like haphazard, because I think in the past, I don't think people have been held accountable. There's been stuff that goes straight through. But I think that most of us now have been involved for the last couple of years. We're holding them accountable, and it's frustrating. So it takes more time, but we have to continue doing that. That's one of the things that why we brought the issue up before the body, and we were successful in 2 of them. In fact, the chair was removed from his endorsement. I don't want to go too much into that particular problem, but I think more and more, I think we have to just stay on top of it We have to participate more, and we need to study the bylaws more. I would suggest doing that because that's what we did at our AD endorsement meeting. We made a few challenges based on conflict of interest, on and on and on. We took a lot of time. So where there's smoke, there's fire. So, and I think this is like a also a good training between here and the ADEMs that are going to happen, because when we start, we're going into the big leagues, right? Because the next step is we're going to be endorsing assembly and state senators, and if they're not on our side, we need to stop their endorsements. But so anyway, that's like, it's a good training now to understand the system. But I really have had problems the last, one of my 5th year in AD 57. So it's been a battle.
Yeah.
With one or two people.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. You know, and this goes back to the whole point that, you know, again, the Democratic, capital D Democratic Party has to truly be a small d Democratic Party too, and practice, you know, fairness and openness, transparency. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
So any other hands up on this topic? Let's see. I don't know any other problems that you all saw or heard about in this latest round, or perhaps previously, if you're an older, or I shouldn't say older, a more experienced member of LACDP. Yeah, Linda Perez and Linda Bassett. Linda Perez raised her hand first, so take it away, Linda Perez.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I am very lucky to be in AD 43 because my chair and vice chair, Paul and Angel, are really good. They're communicating with us, and I think they're really good people. So I'm very lucky about that. Also, have you been invited to the Democrat of the Year event? Or have you been able to put in a name, you know, just in case?
So what's going to happen, to answer that last question there, Linda, is that at tomorrow's 10 a.m. meeting for 8049, at least after the discussion and vote on this particular candidate, we were informed by our 8049 vice chair, Alton Wong, that we would be taking nominations and I guess voting on the Democrat of the Year. I don't know if other ADs also have been advised similarly. Have you, Linda?
I'm sorry. Well, I heard about this like 2 weeks ago or so. It's been a while.
Oh, okay.
And they are taking nominations online. And on the 21st, we're gonna have the presentation, whatever that is.
Okay.
You know, so I don't know if you guys are all aware of that and ready to go.
Okay. Yeah. No. Thank you for letting us know what's going on in your neck of the woods there with that. Yeah, Linda Bassett, you have your hand up.
Hi. Yes. I don't know. Did any of you receive a letter of conflict of interest in our AD? Somebody sent out a letter like this to some of our candidates, stating that there was a huge conflict of interest. I can just read a little bit of it, saying that the 63rd AD will be interviewing. A clear and present conflict of interest exists on the interview panel. The Democratic Party Chair Franbert Calderon works for Assembly Member Anthony Rendon. Assembly Rendon is on the November 3rd ballot seeking re-election to the 63rd Assembly District. And they went on to say that anyone who's running or wants an endorsement there will not receive a good faith, unbiased, and democratic consideration for endorsement by the LACDP due to the fact that Franbert Calderon works for, and she called for, or I guess it's a she, called for his removal. And I thought it was a really super good point. And when we were in our meeting, there was zero discussion. We, in fact, some of you saw us voting on the school board candidate. There were 3 open seats, and there were 3 Democrats running, and they would not vote for the 3rd Democrat because she was not affiliated with Rendon. And so they did not operate in any way, shape, or form in the best interests of the Democratic Party, because there are also 2 Republicans. And to have not endorsed that other Democrat was, you know, I think it was malicious, and it was not incompetent, I think of the word, where they're doing a disservice to the community. She's fabulous, and she got her 30 seconds, and she's waited, and so she did get endorsed at the county committee. Well, it was such a sham show. So that just leads me to my second point, which was, Paul, you discovered that the discussion that's being held, it should be open to the public.
Yes.
Rather than the interviewing.
That's in the bylaws. So
And
the
so
bylaws
that's
are
why I wish
closed.
Julian were here, and maybe you know, Richard, or who else? Henry, isn't that the way it was always done? That the discussion was private, but the interviewing was public?
Yeah, no, the opposite is true according to the bylaws. The
Right.
interviews are private because it says during the interviews, campaign strategy, including campaign finance strategy, is on the questionnaire. It could be revealed, and those things should be kept private. But then it says the discussion and the vote are to be public.
So the dynamic, how that would have changed our election would have been enormous, okay? Because people would have seen how cold and calculating and not in the best interests of democracy that whole thing went down. And if there's anything that I would like to see done is that, you know, people who have conflicts of interest like this shouldn't be allowed to be in LACDP. They have a job, and their job, if you worked for Kellogg's and they were having a contest on the back of their cereal box, if you delivered that box to the consumer, you could not participate. It's just such a conflict of interest. It's just, and it skews everything. Everything is skewed.
Yeah,
anyway, that's my point.
Yeah, I do want to say a couple of points. One is that the bylaws refer to conflict of interest, and I was surprised in one of our 8049 meetings. It was exclusive to 8049. We had an Alhambra City Council candidate who is an elected member of the County Central Committee, who was running for City Council, and her alternate was filling in for her and voted for her. And then I said, wait a sec. I said, you know, nothing against this candidate. I voted for this candidate. But to make sure we're being kosher here, I believe that the bylaws say, you know, you can't, that's a conflict of interest. But it turns out when we looked at the bylaws, it referred to getting paid working for a given candidate. And so it turns out then that the AD vice chair asked point blank, the alternate, well, are you working for this candidate? And it turned out she was. And she revealed she was. She's been, I thought maybe the volunteer campaign manager, the paid campaign manager. And so she, you know, gracious about it, you know, she said, yeah, okay, then I do have to recuse. And so she did. And so her vote was counted as an abstain. So yeah, but to that point, I don't think that the person you're referring to, Brandberg,
Paul.
You.
Paul.
Yeah.
I just while you're on that point. Okay. Yeah. Prior to the meeting, did you know that alternate was going to be there?
No, but remember.
Okay, yeah, but this is part of the problem that I see is when we asked for a list from 8057, who the alternates were. We didn't get a list. So had we done our homework, we don't know who's voting other than the chair is making that decision and saying that's the alternate. They're now voting. We don't know whether they have had their name submitted and approved before the LACDP.
Good point.
And that's part of the whole problem, is that, you know, we don't, there's no verification,
living in
there's
the
no
dark.
there's no credentials, there's nothing, you know, it's just like, whatever.
Yeah, well, we have a little bit of credentials with this member directory. If you got it, it does list the member and then their alternate on this.
After the fact.
You know, right, I know.
After the fact.
Yeah. I was going to comment, though, to the point, the general point that I think Linda was trying to get at, forgetting conflict of interest for a moment. But what I noticed in each of the three that I participated in, these endorsement recommendation committees, the politicians' staffers or alternates, and often they were the same person, a staffer would be the alternate, voted for very different candidates than we in the 7 who were elected. You really saw a dichotomy between establishment candidates and grassroots candidates, and establishment politicians and grassroots elected party leaders and who they were supporting. And it brings up that whole question that I've heard, you know, and perhaps should be considered, that for instance, politicians and their political staffers should have nothing to do with, for instance, ADEM elections. The state party, right, is set up with 1/3 coming from county central committees, 1/3 coming from politicians, and 1/3 from, help me here, 1/3 county, 1/3 ADEMs, and 1/3 politicians. And so if the politicians are running these ADEM elections, running the table in them with their staffers and bussing people in, et cetera, the politicians are really controlling more than their 1/3 lane of the state party. And of course, I mentioned the state party because we're supposed to be state party members, folks, if you're not already. According to my reading of the bylaws, we should have been made state party members upon our stated desire or intention to be so immediately. There shouldn't be this wait. And people in the chat, in the organizational meeting and since, have been saying, well, there's no state convention until next year. And well, but I see people getting emails all the time and being involved with state party activities outside of a convention currently. And we're not a part of it, even though we're county central committee members. And if we're an elected county central committee member, we're supposed to be an automatic state delegate upon our stated intention to be so.
Well, we haven't been asked yet.
Well, yeah, that's part of the problem.
I had asked, and they said that it was not time to do so.
Yeah,
because the other ones, they still serving their term or whatever.
Well, yeah, and I
forget that the election time got changed. So according to the Constitution and bylaws, it was when the election happens. Yeah, it happened regularly in November, but now we had the primary in the state earlier, and now they are not changing or adapting the bylaws to the language that is in there.
Yeah, and I asked, you know, the question: are there members who are no longer LACDP members who are serving as state delegates? And they said yes. How can that be? If your status as a state party member derives from your status as a county central committee member, and you're no longer a county central committee member, how on earth can you be a state delegate?
Yeah, they are occupying our positions. That's the problem.
Right.
Well, what needs to happen is we need to start using the ability to introduce changes. But yeah. My own feeling is to wait until after the election to start hammering them. And but I know there are other people that think we should be doing it now. And I think that we ought to decide as a group democratically how we should do things.
Okay, so yeah, we can talk about strategy, but that was the other thing I was going to say about how out of touch these politicians and their alternates are with the grassroots of the Democratic Party. You also see it, folks, in the internal member directory. They are literally out of touch and want to be out of touch with us. I didn't see any politician's phone number or email address, the ex officio politicians, on that member directory. Now, I'm not asking for their personal cell phone number, but you would think that they might put like a campaign email address, some way of getting a hold of them. But I think it speaks to what, you know, so many of us see, is that it's not just Republicans who take on this air of arrogance once elected, but that many of our Democratic, capital D Democratic politicians are not wanting to be small d with the people, Democratic, and be in touch with them anymore. Literally saying, no, don't contact me. I'm not giving you any phone number or email, campaign, personal or otherwise. It just really struck me when I went through that. And after I had seen how out of touch these politicians were and their staffers or alternates serving for them in these AD committees.
Paul,
yeah.
I think I have some pertinent, I'm not trying to take over anything.
Yeah, no, Richard, please.
Okay. When I was alternate for Don Deere, the first time I came up and Don was running for office and I was his alternate, and Stacy Golden, and I'm not meaning any way maligning her, she said, wait a minute, he's got a conflict of interest. He's Don Deere's alternate. We know who he's going to vote for, you know, and the reality is something came up recently. Someone who is running for the 64th AD, one of the nominations, his significant other is an AD member, was elected as an AD member. So of course, there were rumors going around, well, we can't have that. There's a conflict of interest. But the rules stated that unless you're working for the individual,
money,
that they're, you know, basically, unless you're getting money, you know, you're not influenced. But the funny thing is, and this is not funny, I don't mean this at all, but that's literally what came up. And because the individual might be living with them, doesn't mean that they're necessarily, you know, my wife would never vote for me. So, you know, that kind of situation. But something sad happened, which probably most of you don't know about. In the 64th AD, there was an individual who is named Wilma Wilson, and she passed away just a few days ago. So anyway, she barely has been sworn in, and it's, I guess, isn't it a 4-year term now that people get voted in for? So the people, there could be an election in March to fill her position. But right now, they're already saying, oh, golly, her body isn't even cold yet. How dare you try and fill that position? Well, it turns out behind the scenes, there are a ton of people who are already trying to get their vote in before anybody knows what's going on. And the person right now, who was Mike Gibson's alternate, who also works for Mike Gibson, is one of the individuals that they're trying, she was next in line as far as the people receiving votes. But the thing is, if you work for a politician and you want to keep on working for them, the amount of pressure that can be put on you by your employer, a politician, to vote the way they want, there are cliques, there are groups of individuals where if you want to stay where you are, whether you were voted that way or not, you need to vote with the bloc. And it doesn't matter how qualified, whether the individual was qualified or not, whether you like them or not. If you're voted to be part of a bloc, guess what? It doesn't matter. And I'm not knocking the person who is an employee of Mr. Gibson, but the point is, what are the chances over a 4-year term of someone who's directly employed by the assembly member actually having a free choice in whatever vote they want? And when you go to Central Committee and say, wait a minute, this is totally out of line, then you've got a problem. Then there's the idea, there are individuals in the 64th AD who are elected so they get a vote, and because they were elected to be part of the AD, they get a second vote. And even though, according to the bylaws, it's illegal to be able to vote twice, they do it all the time. And Central Committee never says, well, wait a minute, the rules say you can only vote once, so you have to relinquish one of your positions. And that's happened multiple times. Thank you for your patience.
Wait, say that last part again now. Let's clarify that, Richard. How is this double voting going on?
There's double voting because, let's say you're Janice Hahn, okay? Right. You're Janice Hahn, and because you're an elected, you get a vote. You get a vote.
Right.
And you can also appoint an alternate.
Right.
But let's say Janice Hahn, and she isn't, but let's say Janice Hahn was also elected to represent the 64th AD or whatever AD you want to talk about. Therefore, she would have not only her vote as an elected, but her vote as an elected AD member. And what's happened with a number of individuals, that has been called on, wait a minute, you're taking away an open position for another vote because this person literally is allowed to vote twice. And because, well, darn, we don't want to tell Janice or Mike or whoever you want to throw in, we don't want them upset with us because we like to have people with name recognition on this group. So the fact that they're double voting and then their alternate can also vote, you go, golly, what's the point of even being elected if I've already got one person who's got multiple votes and I've got multiple people with name recognition like that? You want to talk about people not having a voice, they make sure that you don't have a voice because this is a thing that's happened. And yes, I was an alternate to Don Deere. And because the other individual was totally unqualified at that time, yes, I did vote for Don Deere. But that kid had no knowledge of what he was doing. And Don had been part of the West Basin Water District and still is for years. But, you know, technically, do all alternates have a conflict of interest when their individual that they're alternate for comes up? Probably. But in this case, if you had heard the situation, you would have voted the same way. I'm not sure if you were part of the 66th then. No, you've always been part of the 64th, Linda, so you weren't there for that one, but Stacy was.
That's fascinating. To my knowledge, Richard, I've looked over the list. I don't know of any, because it's only county elected, state elected, and federal elected, right? And some ex officio, like DNC members, who have that ex officio spot. I haven't noticed any of those politicians having also run to be an elected member. We see some city council members who do that, but they don't have those automatic ex officio seats. So I don't know if there's anyone currently in LACDP who fits this strange double vote phenomenon.
Well, I know of one individual who came up, and Julian Berger brought her name up, and she was part of the college board. She was part of the college board and got put in twice. So it does happen.
When you say put in twice, because as a college board member, she would not have one of those county, state, or federal ex officio spots.
You'll have to, again, I've got, if you ask Julian, and Linda can give you Julian's number, you can call him directly and he can fill that in. I know there's an individual right now who is a council member who also has 2 votes in the Carson City Council, who's also in one of these situations. So it's not unheard of. It does happen. And again, we can give you that information, but I'd rather have Julian give it to you firsthand.
Okay.
Oh, I almost was. I was almost in that situation. I was running for my. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You were running for assembly, and then you also are running as to be one of the 7 elected.
I was so I submitted to run for the AD, and then with the resignation, our assembly member announced she was resigning to run for Congress. So then I ended up running for assembly. So it was at a right time that I was able to just simply not. I decided just not get the petition filled out for the AD because there were a lot of people who wanted to run. I didn't want to take a slot because I would have otherwise taken up 2 slots.
See, my understanding was that if that case were to have occurred, that you'd have to give up one of those slots. But what Richard is saying is that seemingly people in the past haven't.
Yeah, my understanding is I would not have been forced to give up the slot. I would have chosen to, but it would not have been forced on me.
Wow. I'd have to look at the bylaws. That is bizarre. Hand up. I see Linda Bassett, hand up. Are you there, Linda? Are you unmuted? I'm unmuting you. Are you there, Linda? I see you. I can't unmute you for some reason. Why not?
She has to accept the unmute.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Margie. Well, while are you there, Linda? No? While we're waiting for that.
I think she stepped away.
Okay. Well, let's go to the other Linda. Not to say other, but Linda Perez. You are not the other Linda. You are Linda in your own right. Linda Perez, you have the floor.
Thank you. It's okay. I'll take the second Linda. No problem.
Yeah, no.
I just wanted to say there is so much shit going on with the Democratic Party starting with Bauman, and then now, what's his name? That funny hair person,
Mark Gonzalez.
Mark with the funny hair. he was always Bauman's assistant there, and it's logical that he stepped in and got elected, whatever. That I just stopped going to those meetings because it's a waste of time. You know, just seeing what they want to do and how they want to manipulate the system and the people. That is not right. And that's why I like this group, because I feel that you are honest people and don't go for that. And I appreciate, Paul, all the effort that all that hard work that you put in, you know, getting us all together and directing this meeting. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Linda. It's very kind of you to say.
No, I mean it. But I wanted to say, I ran for ADAM in 2015, something like that. No, I don't remember the year. And Laura Friedman wanted to meet with us. You know, I was elected. We met with her, and I told her, you know, you take money from charter schools, so I don't like you. And she says, oh, I want to earn your vote. But you know what she did? And she did it twice. I'm hot now. She had her own slate, and she sent an email to the entire AD 43 constituency and said, oh, everybody is very good, but I'm, you know, endorsing this slate, please vote for them. And of course, we poor people didn't win, and her endorsed people, her own slate won. And that happened again for this other election. So Laura Friedman and all these elected officials voted for Mark Gonzalez. And as long as they vote for Mark Gonzalez, he's gonna be there forever. And he's just a piece of crap. You know, what can we do to not allow these elected officials vote and have their slates and use their power to endorse them and say, oh, they're very good people, please vote for this slate. That's not right. That is not right. That's part of the dirty politics that are going on here. And I'm here because I want to do the right thing for the people, you know, like all of you.
I hear you. I would just, are you finished, or did you want to finish your thought there or something?
Yes, I want to know if you could do some kind of resolution asking that those elected officials restrained from voting in our internal voting process. Something to keep them away from voting. It's not fair.
Yeah, you know, and just to that end, I forgot to mention when I was speaking, here's perhaps the best example of how out of touch politicians, these local Democratic politicians, are with the grassroots of our party. Alhambra City Council candidate Jeff Maloney was completely skunked in the hometown Democratic Club, the Alhambra Democratic Club. 35-0 he lost to Chris Olson. Okay.
Wow.
4 years ago he lost 17-1, so he got one less vote than before. But yet that guy got 4 votes in our committee. It was a 5-4-2 split. Chris Olson was 1 vote away from getting on the consent calendar as the 60% endorsed recommended candidate, or recommended for endorsement candidate. And then on the floor that night, I believe the vote was 50-28 for Chris Olson, but she didn't get to 60%. But it's just so disturbing when I see local politicians, and I'll name one of them, quite frankly, Judy Chu, our congresswoman, who is a member, or has been in the past, of the Progressive Caucus in Congress. But when it comes to her endorsements locally, she endorses every single establishment Democrat that comes down the pike. No matter how much the grassroots, politically hates that person, not personal against Jeff Maloney, but politically hates this person. She doesn't care, I guess. And it's not just Judy Chu. I'm not trying to single her out, but I do believe in holding politicians accountable.
Yes.
But other Democratic politicians who are supporting candidates that are utterly rejected by the local grassroots because they're corrupt corporate Democrats or whatnot. And yet these politicians are getting behind them. And it's just like, what are you thinking, politician person? The party, the grassroots does not support this person. And nobody voted for it in the club. And only one person did 4 years ago. Why are you supporting this person? Beats me. So that's a little commentary there. The other thing about Democratic politicians and why some of them, you're right, those of you who are saying they should be not having a vote in the county central committee, you're darn right, because they're endorsing Republicans. They don't just endorse sometimes corporate, corrupt local Democrats. They sometimes endorse corrupt corporate Republicans. And the bylaws of LACDP say that if you endorse or even support, it says, just support, a non-Democrat for public office, you're terminated. Out of the county central committee. And then I went to the rules and bylaws committee meeting on September 2nd. And Lawrence Jackson laying out the schedule of, the next year, the workload. I think 6 or 9 months from now wants to take up the issue of termination of members for support of non-Democrats for public office. And I was force muted. Any non-committee member could not speak. Unless you were giving testimony for 3 minutes on 2 separate items that we'll get to. And I would have said, wait a sec, the bylaws say you're gone. What's there to debate? Why? I mean, again, we're a county committee and we're supposed to be supporting the local county and city and school board and water board candidates, promoting good progressive Democrats, right? And yet these Democratic politicians are not just endorsing corrupt corporate Democrats, they're endorsing corrupt corporate Republicans. Why? Why are they being allowed to get away with this? Why are they not being kicked out of the county party?
Paul, what about in our area? Our assembly race is between a Trumper Republican and the Republican Party endorsed non-Trumper Republican. So one of them denies that Aliso Canyon is a problem, and the other one actually recognizes it. But we're not allowed to endorse the fact that there's a less worse person. I mean, that's where some of the problems come from. Not when there's a Democrat that we're ignoring, but when there's no Democrat in the race and we have to look at the least worse. Well,
I would say though, again, if the bylaws clearly say that, right, we exist to support Democrats, right, to support them. And it says, if you support a non-Democrat for public office, you're gone. And the point is that we should only be supporting, I say, follow the bylaws, Democrats for public office. And what really irks me though, Brandy, is that may be an unusual circumstance. Usually, as in the Whittier City Council races this last time, speaking of Janice Hahn, she's made a career of endorsing Republicans for public office in these local offices against Democrats. How did they get away with it? Why are they not kicked out of the party? Not have their Democratic, registration strip, but the leadership, right? We're supposed to be the Democratic leaders of LA County. If you're running around endorsing Republicans, especially against Democrats, you've forfeited your right to be a Democratic leader in LA counties, and the bylaws say it, but they're not being enforced.
I actually wrote a resolution on this exact topic to push that, and what ended up happening is they said that if the resolution went forward, it would both push problems with the situation I just brought up, but also there was this underlining threat that people who supported Bernie would get kicked because he wasn't a Democrat, even though he's running as a Democrat. And that's sometimes an issue. So we have to, I agree. I wrote a resolution on this. I strongly believe that we should make sure that our people support our people, but we have to figure out how to deal with these side circumstances because they do come up and they do end up stopping the resolutions before they go forward.
Oh, yeah. I would just say with the Bernie thing, for those of you who don't know, a lot of people don't know, there is no party registration in Vermont. You're not a Democrat unless you call yourself a Democrat.
Right?
And so, you know, and the other thing with Bernie, right, he was running in the Democratic primary. You know, I guess you could get super technical about it, but he caucuses with the Democrats. He's a Democrat in all respects, except for party registration, which in Vermont doesn't exist. So, so anyway, I don't want to continue belaboring this too long. I'm seeing if there was, I think, oh, that's what I did want to say though. Just a reminder to Linda Perez and others that one of the things that hopefully we can get to tonight in the next 34 plus minutes, we'll see if we go to overtime for those who want to stay, is this issue of the code of conduct, right? And they want to rename the enforcement committee for this code of conduct, which speaks about harassment and discrimination, okay? Discrimination against protected categories and harassment, especially sexual harassment. The harassment, discrimination, and incivility committee. So I would just warn you that as we feared, they may try to weaponize phrases when we refer to people as corrupt or otherwise in other disparaging terms as being uncivil. I believe it's being free and open adults, independently elected usually, and being in the political debate. And as the old saying goes, politics ain't beanbag, or if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Politics is a debate-oriented thing. And yes, we shouldn't be really, I don't know how to say it, gross or vulgar, certainly. But we are adults, and as I've said before at these things, I'm not going to censor you for saying a four-letter word, but I would just warn you that there are these self-appointed tone policers and civility control agents who would love nothing more than to get rid of you and be quite uncivil about it. I believe that, like Democratic scholars the world over, that civility control and tone policing is right the weapon of the status quo, the weapon of people in power who don't want questions, criticisms, dissent, or protest. And people have a right to be angry when their rights are being violated, when rules are being violated, and sometimes they may say something untoward. But our fear, of course, is that it may be weaponized against us and be used to try to kick us out of the party instead of the Democrats who are running around endorsing Republicans. So that's just a little, a little warning and commentary for me. I see Linda Bassett has been waiting with her hand up. Linda, are you there still? Linda Bassett, are you there?
I'm here, but I guess I thought I put my hand down. Sorry.
Okay. Roberto Alvarez, you have a hand up.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, definitely there is a threat, and you know that's the very clear signal that they say that if we don't behave, then we're going to be kicked out, right? Which they don't have any right to do so because we were elected by the people. So obviously, it has been a learning experience for them that we are people that we are not going to follow online the way that they want it. And we're going to be raucous and we're going to be loud and we're not going to be silent. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. So it's just more power to us, and we just keep on hammering the things that we had to do. All we had done is just pointed out the Robert Rules of Order, and we wish they will follow that because they say that that's what they controls the meetings. You know, that's how we conduct the meetings. And obviously it's not that true. We see that they commit violation after violation, and if you call them off on that, then they get upset. They goes, well, you just got here. Why you are asking all these questions? Or what do you want to participate this much? Or you just got here. You just get online, you know, you just follow what we need to do. And obviously that has been their modus operandi for a long time. And we're just coming to disrupt that. And we will keep on doing it because that's why we were elected by the people. when this kind of organization, that it is a private club, they like to be the grandiose of a democracy, and they are nothing but corrupt individuals, that they are just serving a group of people, and they are not serving the people that supposedly elect them, right? So we'll just keep fighting. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Roberto. Okay, I think, Linda, you just accidentally had your hand still raised, Linda Perez. I think, unless you wanted to say something else, Linda. Yeah, okay. Okay, so I think, we should move on. We got a lot of other things to try to get to tonight. I did want to briefly review the September 8th meeting. That 8-hour meeting, there were a lot of things that came up. And I have some points to raise, but again, I don't want to, let's mute if you're still on there. Okay. Be the only speaker on this. I can start though, but if any of you have some questions, comments, concerns, criticisms of that marathon meeting on September 8th, feel free to raise your hand and speak up. Otherwise, I can start in. But you're welcome to. This is a free forum, Friday night forum. This is not just my forum. I'm just your host. So feel free to raise your hand and complain about why we were kept until 3:23 in the morning. Roberto Alvarez, hand up.
One of the things that I saw at that meeting is that they surely took all the time that they needed to get the people that they wanted in that room, right? In that committee, in that meeting. Because in other meetings that has happened before, they have left people out without any consideration of if the person was in the waiting room or somebody was just getting ready to eat, but because you were late 1 minute, they didn't let you in. But since we don't have a good view of what's happening behind the scenes, and when they said, oh, these people is in the waiting room, we don't know. We don't see that because that's secret for us, from us, and they keep that secret to them because they can be manipulating anything they can do because there is not somebody as a witness of what they're doing. The same thing with the voting, the same thing with the people that is, getting their credentials to participate in that meeting. And as far as I'm concerned, it seems like when they need more people in that room, they surely take all the time that they wanted in order to make that happen. That was one of the
and that's my fear. I don't know if those of you who noticed when I raised this issue of allowing people to come in late under the Roberts rules, right, that says you have 4 fundamental rights: the right to attend, the right to vote, the right to make motions, and the right to speak at meetings, that if they're cutting you out at 6:45 before the meeting even begins, you're cutting out people that should have the right to attend the meeting. It used to be that the cutoff was 7:30. I personally do not believe there should be any cutoff. People should be able to come and leave, quite frankly, when they wish and be checked in with Credentials Committee. This is done nationwide in many other county parties to be in line with Robert's rules. However, the LA County Democratic Party is not honoring that. But speaking to your point, Roberto, I noticed Bobby Jean Anderson, longtime LACDP member, said publicly when I was raising the issue of letting people come in late that she was late herself due to, I think she said, technical and personal problems. And she thanked them for doing, I guess they let her in after the time. I don't know. It sounded like it. Are they letting in their friends and shutting out people they don't know or don't like? It just really disturbs me deeply. So yeah, hand up, Linda Perez.
Thank you. I'm talking too much. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, please. Yeah.
But like you said, that meeting that kept us until 3:30 in the morning, it was insane. It was stupid because the chair, again, didn't plan. we had a long list of things in the agenda. He should have known better how much time each person has to speak. How long is it going to take to go through everything that he went through, ID by ID, you know? And that was a waste of time, very badly organized. The agenda was very clear, and you knew you were going to be there forever. So by 3:30, he finally gave up, and I was ready to drop the towel too. But I wanted to be there just to see what kind of bullshit they have, you know, and just affirms the way I feel.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Well, no, don't be sorry. Thank you for coming and participating. Yeah, folks, I mean, I think that's the consensus, right, among folks that I've talked to since that meeting. It was extremely poor planning to think that they could do all of this in one meeting. And for the first time that I had seen, correct me if I'm wrong, longer term members of LACDP, I hadn't seen time allotments before on an agenda. But this time there was, and they had allotted 1.5 hours for all the candidate endorsement recommendation committee candidates.
Right.
That went on for hours and hours, and understandably so, because there were so many candidates. You would think, right, we Democrats pushed for this, the consolidation of the elections into even numbered years, right, because of low voter turnout and local elections in odd numbered years. Well, that means that you have more candidates in these even numbered years, and you need more time. I am told that other county central committees across the country schedule a couple of these, right? Because you can't do it all in one meeting unless you go until 3:30 in the morning or 3:23. So why they thought they could do it. And then what really is, those of you who attended know, I complained that Lawrence Jackson, the co-chair of the Rules and Legal Committee, who serves as like a de facto lawyer, I guess, for LACDP, at least at the meetings, he was the one explaining to us, right, that candidates would get 1 minute each and only 1 minute each if there are no consensus candidate, and there'd be no debate, he said on his PowerPoint slide. And I raised the point of order and said, well, wait a sec. The bylaws clearly state that with an affirmative vote, debate is allowed, not just candidate speeches, whether 1 minute or otherwise. And then he got rattled. I had never seen him get rattled before. He got mad. I was bringing this up, and he said, well, it's going to go long. It's going to take time. And you'll see, you know, yes, there can be debate, but, you know, we're going to be short on time. Well, I guess so, until 3:23 in the morning. And then, of all people, once he had limited them to 1 minute, he was the one who motioned for them to be limited then to 30 seconds after these candidates had waited for hours to finally get their 1 minute. He decides he's going to make the motion to only give them 30 seconds. And so I protested, and I filed a point of order or point of information, I forget, and I got outvoted. The majority of members by that time had wanted to go home, but I didn't feel it was fair to us or to candidates to just give them 30 seconds to make their pitch. I think that meeting should have been at that point, you know, split off, as it ended up being, right? We're going to have this meeting on September 22nd. Why couldn't they have automatically had the foresight and planning to say, we need 2 meetings for this? Because I think this upcoming meeting is going to be pretty short. Why they couldn't have subdivided it into 2 meetings is beyond me. And Mark Gonzalez put out a mea culpa a day or 2 later, I forget when exactly. But he I don't recall him saying that it was poor planning and foresight to think they could somehow jam pack everything in to 1 meeting and not stay until 3 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts. Roberto Alvarez, I see you have your hand up again.
Yeah, it seems like all these important decisions that we had to do as a group, they are overshadowed by the expediency that they want to do because we don't have enough time. Every single time they bring that over, it says, oh, well, you know, we have so many people, we don't have time to debate, we don't have time to do this. let's just all vote yes for this. That's the consent calendar. And
Yeah.
they didn't expect that us will be pulling people from the consent calendar because we don't believe that they should be endorsed by the party.
Yes.
And that's, oh boy, that's something that they were not counting on it. Or it's something that, like, how in the world they can go against what the chair wants to do?
Yeah.
Or why they don't know that we are supposed to say yes to everything that they need to do? And it's just bullshit. And we just got to keep on calling on that.
Yeah, I was also going to mention, I don't see any hand up at the moment, that also too, if Dwight and Dennis, you can kind of keep an eye on the chat. A couple other points, right? At the start of the meeting, Mark Gonzalez assumed the role of parent or teacher talking to little children and was discussing our behavior with us and calling as dilatory and disruptive the points of order and information that we had been raising in the August meeting, and said it was out of control, et cetera, et cetera. And he instituted, again, Richard Vaughn, I don't think this is in writing, I don't see it in the bylaws or in Robert's rules, a 3 strikes and you're out rule, where if you ask for points of order information and are ruled out of order, that it's 3 strikes and you're out. And a couple of people, at least one person, got 2 strikes and then was afraid to speak out because Mark would bang the gavel and I don't know, would kick her out of the meeting. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely bizarre. And I noticed, you know, he very, in my view, pettily and punitively started calling, that's 1 strike or that's 2 strikes against certain people when friends of his, allies, supporters of his, got something out of order. I didn't hear him say that's 1 strike. So I don't know how he was keeping count or why he was keeping count, but it was rather strange, to say the least. And it speaks to, though, this incivility committee, I guess. They want to rename the discrimination and harassment. You know, again, the policies refer to discrimination against protected categories. That sentence is repeated throughout the document. And sexual harassment. I'd have to go through it again. I do not believe I saw the word incivility anywhere, but they want to name it this 3 named committee against discrimination, harassment, and incivility. Define incivility, please, for me, because some of the actions that I've seen coming out of the leadership, the current leadership of LACDP, have perhaps been said with a moderate tone, but have been quite uncivil if civility rhymes with democracy. If civility is about fairness, about openness, transparency, and accountability, and following rules, like Robert's rules, and then not getting upset when people call you out on it, but acknowledging your mistakes or your errors and correcting them. I think that would be the civil or small d democratic and big D democratic thing to do, but that's just me. Few other points. I see, Linda, was your hand still raised or did you want to say something else?
I want to say something else.
Okay, yeah, Linda.
Okay, this will be my last comment.
Well, that's okay. You can keep commenting.
In my opinion, Mark Gonzalez is too young, too stupid, too condescending, and too powerful to have the position that he has.
Well, okay, just for the sake of making sure we don't harass or discriminate against the poor guy. You know, I don't think necessarily he's too young. I don't know his IQ, so I can't accuse him of being stupid. But what his actions that we've been seeing have been certainly strange and disturbing. I think that many of us agree on, at least. So I did want to mention a few of my successful points of order. Again, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm raising these issues because they're issues that are important, or should be, I think, important to all of us, all members, not just members who agree with me, but even those who disagree with me. That discussion must be allowed on motions, right? Gary Shea said, he's right. Yeah, of course. Mark was trying to just go with the motion and the second and move on to the vote. And I was, whoa. Robert's rules is very clear here. You got to have a discussion. And then he appealed to the parliamentarian, and the parliamentarian said, yeah, you got to have a discussion. He's right.
He doesn't know anything.
Again, undemocratic, right? Undemocratic. Forget his age. Any age can do this. Abstentions, right? Must be allowed on all votes. I raised that point of order, right? We had to take a revote at like 2:30 in the morning because they didn't include abstention in the possibilities for our voting. And you got to do that. That's in Robert's rules. That's basic, voting 101. And it was affecting the vote count. And so again, Gary Shea to tell Mark when he appealed to him, he's right, he said, you've got to do that. So those were a couple of things that I noted. Another thing, though, that I noted, I filed this. Unfortunately, a majority, was a relatively close vote, didn't agree with me. But the candidate interview committee, right, having power I didn't know it had. I guess I hadn't read the bylaws carefully enough, that you have to be a member of this small Mark Gonzalez appointed and regional vice chair appointed committee called the Candidate Interview Committee, like 10 people, to pull someone off of it from the consent calendar. This small 10-person committee that is reviewing all these countywide candidates, I hope they give them more than 10 minutes for interviews, but I don't know if they do. And Gene Hurd had wanted to pull somebody. I guess he had problems communicating that. Apparently, he claimed, and another member defending him, that he had his hand raised. Mark Gonzalez said he didn't, ruled him out of order, and ruled the vote closed on the LA Community College Board candidates. I thought, in the interest of confusion and the technical glitches, that this should have been heard. It was not. And unfortunately, the body didn't agree with me. But that's democracy. But I do think it was a violation of proper procedure and just basic, I think, decency. There was a member, Gene Hurd, of that committee who wanted to pull somebody, and for some reason it didn't get recognized. And that goes to the whole point, right? That things are not getting raised hands and motions in the chat and points of order in the chat and points of information in the chat. At the July 11 meeting, we're getting routinely ignored. They were getting often ignored on August 11, and they were still getting ignored, though to a lesser degree, on September 8th. That is why Robert's Rules of Order calls for simultaneous oral communication, which you can unmute yourself and shout out. Point of order, point of information, point of privilege, right? Those privilege motions, as it were, that can be interruptible of whomever is speaking at the time, including the chair. So anyway, we are starting to run low on time, folks. It's 8:48. I do want to hear also from Brandy Grace with a preview of Prop 24 for our upcoming meeting. She put in a request, and I will honor that to let her discuss Prop 24 with us. That's one of the things we're going to be taking up on September 22nd. That was not decided by the Ballot Measures Committee. They're going to give a little presentation of their own, but I'd like to hear hers. So unless there is further discussion on the September 8th meeting, let's move, I think, to the 22nd, a little preview, and it's going to be focused on these ballot measures. And the one that our Ballot Measures Committee did not take a position on was Prop 24. And so I'd like to give Brandy the time that she requested to present to us on Prop 24, which is a controversial one, but which many, speaking of data privacy, folks are opposing because it doesn't go far enough and take steps backwards. I'd like to give her the floor to discuss with us some of that stuff, unless there's briefly some other mention from September 8th. Is there, or no? I don't see any hands. So are you still there, Brandy, or have you nodded off?
I'm here.
You're here. All right. So do you have your little slideshow ready to go?
I do. You need to enable my ability to screen share.
Okay, excellent. Let me do that. This is going to be, oh, yeah. Make host, make co-host, allow record, rename, put in waiting room. Not going to do that. Let me make you a co-host.
Yeah.
And then let's see if you can share your screen that way, Brandy.
That should work. All right. I haven't done a presentation this way before. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Brandy.
Okay. Prop 24, the Wolf Info Privacy Protection Clothing. So what is Prop 24? Alistair McTaggart, a wealthy real estate developer, has written and self-funded a proposition called the California Privacy Rights Act. It sounds really nice. It claims to give you more control over your privacy rights, which it sort of does in some ways, but mostly is politely saying half measures. But it seriously curtails them in other ways. So very quick background. Alistair and somebody named Mary Stone Ross co-authored the 2018 California Consumer Privacy Act, which actually didn't go into effect until this summer. It's only been in effect about a month and a half, 2 months, something like that. And even before it went into effect, it was so poorly written, it had 5 amendments that were passed to it. So we already are not on track for doing a great job with first runs at this written by this person. But McTaggart did not like the new amendments, and after doing some deals and side conversations with Google and Facebook, Amazon, all those, went on to write and completely self-fund Proposition 24 with several millions of dollars behind it. Interestingly, the main opponent for it is the co-author, Mary Stone Ross. So this is ultimately a personal battle between 2 people dragging in the rest of the state. So the serious problems with Prop 24, it introduces mass exceptions for credit reporting industry, loopholes for big tech, new ways for police to freeze your rights, and expand schemes that would disproportionately hurt vulnerable communities. It prevents our legislation from passing further privacy laws that conflict with the oftentimes vague or broad terms that we're seeing, and requires that any new law cannot be passed unless it, quote, gives attention to the impact on business and innovation. This bill also slapped both techie and non-techie businesses that are smaller with thousands and thousands of dollars in fines for oftentimes small unintentional errors, and completely eliminates an option that it currently exists for them to simply correct the mistake without these massive fines. So the main problem, there's many of them, but this is the big one we're focused on, which is it expands what's called the pay for privacy schemes. So this allows a business to withhold discounts from consumers unless they allow the business to profit from harvesting their data on their shopping habits. So things like, when did you last buy tampons? Or how many condoms do you buy? How often? What type? What size? So this is the kind of profile they can put together on you. And it's something that if you have more money, you can afford to opt out. And if you are poor, you can't. Specifically, it has to do with loyalty clubs, but it's expansive. It also expands an existing loophole that will allow not just sale of data, but also sharing of this data. And it erodes our right to delete. Prop 24 expands the business's right to refuse a deletion request by expanding the amount of excuses basically a business can give. Very specifically, they can use it, they can say that they have to hold on to that data to detect security incidents that compromise data, which is such an easy thing to claim around ad tech fraud. And it says that a business doesn't have to transmit the consumer's deletion request, what we say downstream, to other companies that they've given the data to, if doing that is just disproportionately difficult, if it has disproportionate effort, which is always going to be the case. It weakens biometric privacy rights, so it would basically eliminate all privacy protections on things like your DNA information or if they've scanned your face. As long as the business says that they don't use it to specifically identify you, but if they change their business model later, which they can easily do, then they've already got the information. It doesn't allow consumers to sue businesses that violate the privacy rights, and it expands the ability of ISPs, internet service providers, to combine consumer data obtained from different places like businesses and consumers for any business purpose, which also expands something called digital redlining. So it creates a loophole that allows credit agencies and data corporations to sell personal information of small business owners. And it furthers this idea of digital redlining, which is a practice where a lender uses a person's race or the racial makeup of a neighborhood as an excuse for refusing to lend to residents or charging higher interest rates because it's a bad neighborhood. The entire premise of this is that it's opt-out, not opt-in. So it forces customers to constantly be chasing after their own privacy instead of being de facto private. So who opposes this? Most privacy advocates strongly oppose this. The Consumer Federation of California is one of the top consumer advocacy and consumer privacy agency groups, and they are one of the biggest opponents of this, as is ACLU of California, Consumer Action. We've also got CARA. There's just a host of groups, as well as many individuals who work in the privacy community. There are a couple of groups who, well, they support it because it sounds nice. It says privacy, Common Sense and Consumer Watchdog, and a few others. But it's also supported by people like the Data Tech Corporation CEO and co-founder Tom Kemp, and prominent tech company investors, including Facebook, are somehow supporting this thing that's supposedly going to stop big tech. And it's not supported by one of the most important digital privacy rights groups, which is the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Surprisingly, groups that are not opposing Prop 24 are Facebook, Google, and Amazon. While the Pro group has millions of dollars in funding for its PAC, there is currently $0 listed for the anti-PAC. And you have to understand the tech industry, between things like AT&T and Amazon and Google, Facebook, all of these companies spend billions of dollars combined on lobbying every year. It's now one of the largest industries for lobbying. And yet they've spent absolutely $0 on this. So that shows you how much they're worried about this impacting their business, which is in selling our data. Now, there's a few points we keep hearing. The Republican Party of California did oppose it, which makes sense. They generally oppose when there are excessive fines on small businesses, and so therefore they opposed it. Facebook told its investors in one of its hearings that it listed it as one of the risks. So people are like, oh, but it said it might hurt their profits, which if you're running a publicly traded company, you often put out these investor risk management documents that are pages and pages and pages. They're whole books, and that list everything under the sun. So it's really the equivalent of your local Starbucks posting that sign that says the state of California mandates that there might be cancer here, pointing to that and going, oh, see, Starbucks causes cancer. No, they're required to put that in there for liability reasons. And some people think that we can just tweak the law later, which is very much not the case because of this impact on business and innovation requirement, which corporations could just easily use to thwart any future privacy laws that we want to write, including ones to fix the massive holes of this one. I've heard claims that it has union protections. As a former union leader, I absolutely adore unions, but that's absolutely not what this bill is about. And failure to pass it will not hurt unions in absolutely any way. They won't lose anything out on this. So no more on 24. I'm always happy to answer questions. We're not going to get enough time in the meeting on Tuesday to talk much about this. There's going to be positions from both sides, and I've heard we each get 5 minutes, which I've already done more than that now. So without going into the details, and it's difficult because you really have to understand tech on a very deep level in order to be able to find what some of the problems are in the bill. And so it doesn't surprise me that there are good Democrats that are supporting it. It sounded good. So.
Yeah, no, thank you, Brandy. And we have some requests in the chat. Do you mind, or would you mind
absolutely
sharing it in you're saying, could you share the slides in the chat?
If
you want to or can do that.
It won't allow me to share because it's too big a file. Okay. Yes, everybody is correct. CARA recommends no. League of Women Voters recommends no. Unfortunately, the LA Times appears a few days ago to have said, oh, it's flawed, but pass it anyway.
Really?
Yeah, at least it was a huge op-ed. I don't know if that was formal endorsement or just a large article that they wrote, but this is the big problem with this. We are going to have a big problem with voters looking at this and saying, oh, I like my privacy, I will pass this, because you have to understand it to know that it's a problem. So by taking a neutral stance, which the state party did and DIPSIV just did, it means that people are going to vote for it because nobody is going around sufficiently warning them, and they have millions of dollars to push this on people. So this really has to be a grassroots effort to say, oh God, no.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Yeah, no, thank you, Brandy. We are at the 9 o'clock hour. None of us have turned into pumpkins though, because it's not midnight, right? Or it's not 3:23 in the morning yet. You know, we are technically in overtime, but you know, I would like to open the floor for anyone. Again, at this point, you know, come or go as you please. But for those of you who might have questions for Brandy, please feel free to ask them, as long as Brandy doesn't have a hot date to get to here at 9 o'clock. Yeah, any questions for Brandy? You can read.
Guys, it's me.
Sorry, my son wanted to say hi.
Oh, well.
It's me, Malcolm.
Hi, Malcolm. Welcome. Our youngest Democrat here tonight. That is great. Thank you for making it an all in the family affair, Brandy.
Yeah, and so hold on, sweetie. What I will say is, if anybody wants to email me or have questions about anything, I'm happy to respond. I'm working with some other privacy advocates to coordinate a response for Tuesday, because we'll get like 3 people each get 1 minute to explain this. Hold on, sweetie. And if this were a normal thing, I would hand out, you know, handouts. I would print out and hand them out myself. But what I'm going to try to do instead is create a virtual handout that people can email to each other from LACDP.
Yeah, yeah. Well, share it with us. You can send it to me.
Guys, I have a surprise for you.
In the chat. Yeah, if only you could bring Malcolm to help distribute flyers in person at an LACDP meeting, but we can't do that. So,
well, the last time I took Malcolm to an LACDP meeting, I got booed out of the room. So.
Oh, okay. Yikes.
Even
sweetie.
Well, but yeah, feel free to share whatever you can or want to tonight. I don't know if you can put anything in the chat, like you say, the slides are too much, but yeah, you can certainly send to me, and we can share amongst ourselves on Facebook in our group. You are in our group, right, Brandy? In our 2020.
Hold on. Malcolm, please. I haven't done anything with Facebook in a couple months because.
Okay.
I'll email you. We can email each other, and you can get me into stuff.
Okay, great.
I want to talk to you.
So I didn't see any questions with hands, but if there is a question, you can speak up for Brandy. I don't see one there. Is that Sarah Roos? You want to say something? Okay, wait. I accidentally muted you. Okay, are you there? Let's see. Can you there? Okay. Are you there, Sarah? Yikes! You're still. I can't hear Sarah, but let's see. I see you, Sarah. I see your lips moving, but we can't hear you. I'm going to try to unmute you again.
Sarah said that their question is regarding EFF. I've been in contact over other issues with higher ups at EFF. In my opinion, they're a very good group. I thought it was interesting that they took the neutral stance on this, but then released a giant long list of all the flaws with it.
I thought I said that too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what I don't know what the problem was that they didn't just strictly come out. But yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan personally of the work of the EFF. I wish they had just not kind of wussed out on this.
Yeah.
I don't know about what's going on with their funding though. Sorry, Sarah.
Yeah. Okay. And speaking of funding, I did want to get to this tonight. The LACDP funding of candidates. We can discuss this at the next Friday night forum, maybe in a couple weeks. But yeah, it's going to be coming up, folks. Right? It's this campaign season, election season. I've raised this issue before, and you know, LACDP. Right? I've raised this issue before at Friday night forums. In the last cycle, at least in recent years, has been funding a select few favored candidates for unknown and unexplained reasons, in my view, and not funding all candidates, or not putting out, at least in this last election cycle, the mailer that they've seemingly always put out, saying, here are the local endorsed Democrats from LACDP, LA County Democratic Party, please vote for these people. And so, you know, I don't know, I don't think a treasurer's report is on the agenda for this upcoming meeting. So I don't think we'll be able to ask questions about it. But certainly at the October meeting, there are questions to be had as to, you know, why LACDP is not financially supporting all candidates, at least through you know, mailers that list the candidates to local voters. So that I wanted to get to tonight. The other thing, folks, we have the first reading, okay, of the Code of Conduct enforcement language, it says, and the virtual meetings language. I, along with some other observers that are LACDP members, attended that September 2nd meeting I told you about at the last Friday night forum, that Rules and Bylaws Committee meeting. At that committee meeting was final testimony for these two documents. And I don't know when first testimony was taken. We weren't apprised of it. We weren't emailed about it. I happened to stumble across on the website this September 2nd meeting for Rules and Bylaws. I went and I didn't click the raised hand in time, and I got bypassed for my testimony on one of them. I forget honestly which one now. And then I did in time for the second one. And in this time, I brought up the subject that Drexel, the LACDP, Drexel, Elizabeth Hennis staff are not putting out emails to us, inviting us to give testimony at these committee meetings, or just let us know that they're happening. And when I said that, or after I said that, after my 3 minutes were up, that was my only real criticism of Drexel Hurd there. Drexel Hurd then said, made a threat, personal or political or otherwise, I don't know, but he said, he didn't name me by name, but he said, those who are trying to weaponize me would be well advised not to. And the line was either that it doesn't end well for them, or that it won't end well for them, or it hasn't ended well for them, or there was some reference to, you know, things not panning out for anyone like me who dares to criticize him, however gently or correctly. So that was had at that meeting. I would advise you to take a look at those documents before the meeting and review them and raise any objections, because this first reading is going to be at the September 22nd meeting on Tuesday. And then the second reading would be, I assume, at the October meeting, if they can get approval for this first reading. Many of us have problems with these, the language of some of these policies, including the renaming, the rechristening of this committee as the Harassment, Discrimination, and Incivility Committee. And we're afraid that, speaking of weaponizing, people like Drexel Hurd, like Mark Gonzalez, are going to weaponize these policies against people who dare to question or criticize them, instead of going after the sexual harassers, instead of going after the racist, the sexist, the homophobes that these policies are trying to get after, and terminate us, again, instead of terminating the Democrats who routinely endorse Republicans in these local elections. So take a look at those documents, people. I think we've covered pretty much the terrain that I had wanted to get to, even though we kind of brushed over some of these things a little lightly. But yeah, I'm basically done with the, you know, tentative topic list, tentative agenda list that I had come up with. We are in overtime now. It's 9:09. We can stop the recording, and maybe I can figure out how to do that and continue with social time. Or if there are questions, comments, concerns, criticisms that you want to be part of the recording in overtime, you know, feel free to raise your hand or speak up, because I don't want to keep it till 3:23 in the morning. But yeah, you're welcome to speak up. We've lost some people, obviously, over recent minutes and this final time, here. But anyway, those of you who are left, feel free to chime in or chime up. You're welcome to do so. I see Valinda and David Roquelo, our favorite Green Party and Democratic Party mixed couple, who do not war with each other that we know of or war with us, but we're welcome to have them. And thank you again for coming to the two of you. And yes, please feel free. The floor is yours.
Hey, this has been a great meeting. I'm looking forward to the next one, even though it's like semi-weekly.
Yeah.
And, as long as you keep doing it, I just think this is a great place to, find out what's actually going on in the county council and all the other elements of the Democratic Party that nobody has explained to the general public.
Well,
Nobody explains anything on how all this stuff works, and it's way too complicated.
Yeah.
And here you are doing your best. I couldn't stand going to an eight-hour meeting at 3 o'clock in the morning myself, but hey, bless you for doing it. And Valinda is really happy, just to get the final report on. AD 51, they resolved it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I did email with you about that, David. Before I address that, though, to the point that we welcome members of the public, not just LACDP members, to this, because that's exactly what I want to, one of the things I want to accomplish with this, right, is to let members of the public join us and learn about us. We are the biggest party in the county. We dominate politics in this county. You have a right to know what we're doing, this county central committee. We are on the public ballot. Voters usually do not know what county central committee is when we appear on the ballot for our respective parties. Green Party, it's called, County Central Committee Council or something. And I think people have a right to know. Voters have a right to know. And the other thing, too, is I want folks like you, quote unquote outsiders, to be able to hold us accountable, to know what we're doing, to know what's going on, and to ask questions, to even make criticisms, because how else are we as Democrats going to get better and more responsive to the people? The people are politics. Politics is people. To voters, we don't know. I mean, that's what I was kind of speaking to earlier. These politicians who live in a bubble within the Democratic Party and are rejecting the candidates supported by the local grassroots club 35-0 and 17-1 4 years ago, and yet are sticking by this guy, despite all of his corruption and problems. And it's like, well, what's going on here? So thank you for coming. The other thing, 8051, right? We discussed this briefly at the last meeting. It got resolved, right? For those of you who weren't here, the 8051 deadlock, right? That was deadlocked. I think it was 10-10. The quote unquote forces of the establishment against the quote unquote forces of the grassroots deadlocked, and they kept deadlocking twice. Okay, and then finally on the third vote, a compromise was forged, a consensus was come to, in which two candidates, Frankie Carrillo and Janine Ron, chair, vice chair, respectively, were put forward as compromise consensus candidates and were elected unanimously. And so that was a wonderful outcome, because as Gary Shea said on Facebook, then it would have gone to the policy committee, and that's the de facto e-board of LACDP, and they would have had to have decided. So that was good. It was decided at the local level, but there was a loophole that was discovered, as I mentioned in my email to you. And that loophole was that DNC members, Democratic National Committee members, who get an ex officio seat within LACDP, there's this loophole where they can appoint anybody from anywhere as their alternate. The rest of us have to have our alternate be from our assembly district, right? This is local control, right? Grassroots politics. But the grand poobahs of the party, the DNC members, they can pick anybody to be their alternate. I guess as long as they're a Democrat, and I guess as long as they live in LA County, but they don't have to live within the assembly district. So that
But
was.
it sounds very strange. It sounds very strange that, oh, we don't want to, get this big name recognition politician. We don't want to upset them. It's like, what?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
They work for us.
Yeah. I mean, we have to hold our politicians accountable. They're public servants, and we're political creatures, and we're in a political party, and we have a right to hold them accountable as public officials and as party members. And that's why I'm saying these Democratic politicians who run around endorsing Republicans, the bylaws say they should be gone. And
That's insane. But I wouldn't mind if they endorsed Green and Democratic Socialists and some of those other, not the American Independent Party from George Wallace, but Bernie's Independent Party. I don't even know if it is a party at all. I mean, it's just, you said that they don't have to say what they are. Yeah. Which is all fascinating stuff. We need to get this information out, to the general public. I mean, tomorrow, Belinda is going to her PALID meeting, which is the Filipino American Democrats. They're doing a day of action.
Okay.
And, her biggest thing is on Facebook, she keeps getting blocked by, Filipino, outside this country, chat box that are calling Joe Biden, first a democrat and an abortionist. Yeah. So they're not, they're just going straight in, for drinking the Kool-Aid and whining and dining at the Trump table. And it's nice to hear that there's other things in the Democratic politics that we have to concern ourselves with also, besides this big media circus.
Right.
And I just wanted to thank you, Paul, for all that you're doing, and in fact, all this whole group.
Well, thank you. Thank you, David. That's very kind of you to say.
So, Paul, Sarah Roos wants your attention.
Yes, Sarah, hand raised there. Sorry about that. Sarah, please. Are you there, Sarah? Sarah Roos.
Something posted in the chat.
Okay, we're having, I guess, more audio difficulties. Sarah, I do see Sarah says in the chat that in theory this is because DNC members are statewide position, important to understand the rationale. Not saying I agree with it, but to counter, need to know why. But I have heard that it was a loophole, right? That these DNC members, remember, the DNC members, yes, they are elected in a statewide capacity. However, they have to be from the AD, right? So they are from, they reside in an AD, right? They're elected, yes, to be representatives from the state of California to the Democratic National Committee. However, their house doesn't comprise the entire state of California. Their house is in, or apartment or whatever, is in a given assembly district. And then they are made delegates from that assembly district, right, within LACDP. But they, contrary to other, right, elected or ex officio members throughout LACDP, under the current bylaws, don't have to appoint an alternate also from their AD, one of their neighbors. They can appoint somebody from Marina del Rey, even if they live in Highland Park. That is strange. I think it's a loophole and oversight, but it's one that should have been caught before and should be corrected now. Because, remember too, you can make the same argument that county supervisors, if they're a Democrat, they're automatic members of LACDP. They're elected to represent the county, or at least their district. But that district goes beyond an assembly district. But they have to pick someone, if I'm not mistaken in the bylaws, from their assembly district, right? If they're part of an assembly district delegation, which they are, you're put into the assembly district delegation from where you reside, right? The premise is that you should make one of your neighbors one of your alternates to represent the community, the local grassroots Democrats from that community, not from 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 miles away. They should be one of your neighbors. So, because you want to know what the local issues are, right? So, anyway, that is my take on that. Cynthia said good night. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, anybody else before we click off the recording? Or are we done here? And for those of you who remain, we can have, I guess, social time if I can figure out how to do this. Last time I had difficulty, but that was because of the live streaming to stop the recording. But okay, I guess we're done. I don't see any hands raised. Nobody's unmuting themselves to speak. So I guess we are done, at least with the recorded portion of the meeting. So without objection, I'll adjourn it here at 9:21, I guess, and we'll stop the recording now. Okay, so stop recording.